Have you ever felt it? That quiet shift that arrives without announcement, settling into your days like dust in afternoon light. Your daughter calls less frequently now. Your son mentions he'll visit, maybe next month when work slows down. The grandchildren who once clung to your legs now live behind glowing screens, their voices distant even when they're in the same room. And in the silence that follows each brief conversation, a question rises unbidden. Have I become someone people no longer need? It's a pain that lives in the spaces between words. Many carry it, but rarely name it. This growing awareness that the circle we once stood at the center of has quietly shifted. Not because anyone stopped loving us, but because life moved as life does, forward, outward, away. And we're left standing here, wondering where we fit in a world that seems to have less and less room for the wisdom we've spent decades accumulating. But here's what the Buddha understood over 2,000 years ago, sitting beneath that Bodhi tree as the first light of dawn broke through the leaves. Suffering comes not from change itself, but from our resistance to it. He taught that clinging to what must inevitably shift is like trying to hold water in clenched fists. The tighter we grasp, the more quickly it flows away. The people we love, the roles we've played, the certainties we've built our lives upon. All of these are subject to what Buddhists call anicca, impermanence. Nothing stays the same. Not our children's attention, not our body's strength, not the reflection we see in the mirror each morning. And yet, within this truth lies an invitation. Because when we stop resisting the natural movement of life, when we release the expectation that others will provide our peace, something remarkable happens. We discover a different kind of strength. Not the strength of youth or the power that comes from being needed, but the quiet, unshakable foundation that comes from learning to stand on your own. Today, we're going to explore 7 inner pillars that no one's absence can take from you. Not walls that shut people out, but foundations that hold you steady when the ground beneath shifts. These are ancient teachings made practical, Dharma for everyday living. This is the path the Buddha taught to lay people who came to him asking not how to escape life, but how to live it well. This isn't about becoming isolated, it's about becoming whole. It's about building an inner home so solid that you can weather any storm, including the storm of loneliness that aging sometimes brings. Because the truth the Buddha spoke with such clarity is this: the most reliable person in your life has always been you. And it's time to honor that. 1. Your body, the first foundation of presence. There's a Buddhist teaching called Kaya-nupassana, awareness of the body. It's the first of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and the Buddha placed it first for a reason. Your body is not just the vessel you travel through life in. It is your most faithful companion, the one that has carried you through every moment of joy and sorrow, every triumph and heartbreak. It has never abandoned you. And yet, how many of us have spent years at war with our own flesh, resenting the aches that arrive uninvited, mourning the strength that once came so easily, watching the mirror as time writes its story in lines and softness, and feeling only loss. We treat our aging bodies like failed machines instead of what they truly are, wise teachers showing us the truth of impermanence with every creaking joint and forgotten word. I once knew a woman named Dorothy, 78 years old, who told me her knees had become her enemies. She stopped walking because it hurt. She stopped going to the community center because climbing the stairs exhausted her. One morning, she woke up and couldn't remember the last time she'd felt truly alive in her own skin. Her body, she said, had betrayed her. But then something shifted. A neighbor invited her to a gentle movement class at the local Buddhist center. Not yoga, not aerobics, just simple mindful movement. Standing, breathing, feeling the weight of her feet against the floor. The teacher, a gentle Vietnamese monk, said something that changed her relationship to her body forever. Your body is not failing you. It is teaching you to move differently, to listen more carefully, to be present with what is, not what was. Dorothy began walking again. Not fast, not far at first, but each step became a meditation. She felt her feet touching the earth. She noticed her breath moving in and out. And slowly, the resentment softened into something else. Gratitude. Not for a perfect body, but for a body that, despite everything, still rose each morning and carried her forward. The Buddha taught that our bodies are precious, not because they're permanent, they're not, but because they're the instrument through which we experience awakening. Every sensation, every breath, every moment of physical presence is an opportunity to be fully alive. When we stop fighting our bodies and start befriending them, something miraculous happens. Movement becomes medicine. Even the aches become teachers, reminding us to slow down, to pay attention, to care for ourselves with tenderness. This doesn't mean ignoring real pain or refusing medical care. It means changing the story. Instead of, "My body is broken," try, "My body is changing, and I'm learning to move with those changes." Walk, even if it's just to the mailbox and back. Stretch in the morning sunlight. Feel your hands in warm water as you wash dishes. These small acts of presence are not trivial. They're revolutionary. They're how we reclaim our sense of aliveness when everything else feels uncertain. Your body is your first refuge, not because it will last forever, but because it's here now, breathing you into this moment. Honor it. Move it gently. Thank it for the journey it's carried you through. Because true freedom begins not with a perfect body, but with a compassionate relationship to the one you have. 2. Emotional resilience. Learning to hold what cannot be fixed. In Buddhist teachings, there's a profound image, the second arrow. The Buddha explained it this way: when something painful happens, loss, disappointment, change, that's the first arrow. We can't always avoid it. Life shoots these arrows at all of us, but then we take up a second arrow ourselves and shoot it into the same wound. Why me? This shouldn't be happening. I can't handle this. That second arrow, the one we inflict on ourselves through resistance and judgment, causes far more suffering than the first. Emotional resilience doesn't mean feeling pain. It means learning not to shoot that second arrow. It means developing the capacity to feel deeply without drowning, to let emotions move through you like weather patterns rather than building your home inside the storm. There's a practice in Buddhism called rain, and it's become one of the most powerful tools for aging with grace. It stands for recognize what's happening, allow it to be there, investigate with gentleness, nurture with compassion. When loneliness arrives, and it will, you don't push it away. You don't tell yourself you shouldn't feel it. You recognize, loneliness is here. You allow, it's okay to feel this. You investigate, where do I feel this in my body? What does it really need? And then you nurture, may I be kind to myself in this moment. I met a woman named Margaret at a meditation retreat. She was 74, recently widowed, and still raw with grief. She told me she'd spent months trying not to cry, trying to be strong, trying to move on, because that's what everyone kept telling her to do. But the grief only grew heavier. Then someone taught her this simple practice of allowing, of sitting with her sorrow without trying to fix it, of placed her hand on her heart and whispered, "This is hard. I'm allowed to feel this." She said something I'll never forget. For 60 years, I believed emotional strength meant not feeling, but real strength is feeling everything and not breaking. It's being broken and still breathing, still here, still tender. The Buddha taught that life includes dukkha, usually translated as suffering, but more accurately, the unsatisfactoriness of trying to make permanent what is temporary. We suffer not because we age, but because we resist aging, not because we lose people, but because we cling to their presence. Emotional resilience is the practice of loosening that clench, of saying, "This hurts, and I'm strong enough to hold it gently." What weighs on you? What feeling have you been pushing away, hoping it will disappear if you ignore it long enough? Perhaps it's loneliness. Perhaps it's regret. Perhaps it's the quiet fear that your life doesn't matter anymore. Whatever it is, try this. Pause. Place your hand on your chest. Breathe. Recognize the feeling without judgment. Allow it space. Investigate it with curiosity. And then, this is crucial. Nurture yourself the way you would nurture a frightened child, because beneath every difficult emotion is a part of you asking to be seen, to be held, to be told that it's okay to be human. Emotional resilience isn't about becoming bulletproof. It's about becoming permeable, open enough to feel everything without being destroyed by any of it. And that, dear friend, is true strength. 3. Consistency. The quiet anchor in changing tides. There's a Zen story about a student who asked his master, "What is the most important thing?" The master replied, "Every morning I rise, every evening I rest. That is the most important thing." The student was confused. "But surely there must be something more profound than that." The master smiled. What could be more profound than showing up for your life, day after day, exactly as it is? When we're young, we chase variety, adventure, novelty. We build lives around ambition and achievement, measuring our worth by what we accomplish. But as we age, especially when the roles we once played begin to fade, we discover something the Buddha taught long ago. True freedom doesn't come from doing whatever we want. It comes from doing what needs to be done, even when, especially when, we don't feel like it. Consistency is not boring. It's the invisible foundation that keeps the mind steady when everything else shifts. The Buddha called this samavayama, right effort. The gentle, persistent dedication to practice that doesn't depend on mood or circumstance. It's waking at the same time each morning, not because you have somewhere to be, but because the rhythm itself becomes a refuge. It's making your bed, brewing your tea, sitting by the window as the day begins. Small rituals that say, "I am here. I matter. My life still has shape and meaning." I knew a retired teacher named Frank who, after his wife passed, felt himself disappearing into emptiness. His days had no structure anymore. He'd wake when he woke, eat when he remembered, let the hours drift past like clouds. He wasn't depressed exactly, just untethered. And slowly, without noticing, he stopped caring. Then one morning, for no reason he could name, he decided to do one thing: make coffee at 7 o'clock. Not because anyone needed him to, just because. The next morning he did it again, and the next. Soon, he added a 20-minute walk. The next 10 minutes of sitting quietly before breakfast. Nothing grand, nothing was posted on social media, just small, consistent acts of showing up for himself. 6 months later, he told me, "I thought freedom meant doing whatever I wanted. But real freedom is knowing I can rely on myself. That no matter what happens, I'll still rise, still move, still meet the day with presence." That's the gift of consistency. It's not rigidity, it's reliability. And when you become reliable to yourself, you stop desperately needing others to give your days meaning. Buddhists speak of sila, ethical conduct, as one of the 3 pillars of practice. But sila isn't just about grand moral choices. It's about the daily discipline of kindness toward yourself, keeping your word to yourself, creating a life that doesn't depend on external validation, but on internal integrity. What small ritual could you adopt? Perhaps it's writing 3 things you're grateful for each morning. Perhaps it's preparing one nourishing meal each day. Perhaps it's simply sitting in silence for 5 minutes, feeling your breath, acknowledging that you're still here, still alive, still worthy of your own attention. These practices don't add more to your life. They create the spaciousness in which life can be deeply felt. Consistency doesn't mean your days must look the same. It means there's a thread running through them, a gentle commitment to yourself that says, "I will not abandon me." And that commitment, quiet as it is, becomes the strongest foundation you can stand on. 4. Meaningful connection. Presence over proximity. There's a beautiful teaching the Buddha gave about Kalyana Mitta, spiritual friendship. He said it wasn't just part of the path, it was the whole of the path. True companionship, he taught, isn't measured in how many people surround you, but in how deeply you can be present with another human being, and they with you. Loneliness, especially as we age, doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being unseen. You can sit in a room full of family and feel utterly isolated if no one truly sees you, if every conversation skims the surface, if you've become invisible in plain sight. But you can also sit alone in your garden and feel deeply connected to the birds visiting your feeder, to the neighbor who waves as they pass, to the quiet presence of life itself. After 70, 80 years of living, many people find their circles shrinking. Friends pass away or move to assisted living. Family members get busy with their own struggles. The social structures that once held us, work, organizations, regular gatherings, fade, and we're left with a question: how do I create a connection when I can no longer rely on proximity? The answer is simple, but not easy. You become the one who reaches out first. You become the source of warmth instead of waiting for others to warm you. There's a woman in my neighborhood named Rose, 81, who lives alone. Every Tuesday, she bakes something simple: muffins, cookies, bread, and takes it to 3 different neighbors. Not because they ask, not because she expects anything back, just because. She told me, when I stopped waiting for people to think of me and started thinking of them, my whole world changed. I'm not lonely anymore. I'm busy loving. This is metta in action. Loving kindness as a practice, not just a feeling. Buddhists have been cultivating metta for centuries through a simple meditation. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering. And then extending it outward. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. It sounds almost too simple, but when you practice offering genuine well wishes to others, something shifts. The walls you've built around your heart, the ones that whisper, "Nobody cares about me," begin to soften. Connection after 60 isn't about quantity, it's about quality. It's the 5-minute conversation with the librarian who remembers your name. It's the text message you send to an old friend saying simply, "I thought of you today." It's volunteering, not to fill your calendar, but to be useful, to see and be seen, to remember that you still have something to offer this world: your presence, your attention, your kindness. And here's the paradox. When you stop desperately needing others to fill your emptiness, people often draw closer, not out of obligation, but out of genuine warmth. Your self-sufficiency becomes attractive. Your peace becomes contagious. You're no longer the black hole of need, but a steady flame that others gather around for warmth. So ask yourself, where can you be the initiator? Where can you offer the connection you wish to receive? Because Sangha, community, isn't something you wait to be invited into. It's something you create, one small gesture at a time. 5. Financial clarity. The shield against vulnerability. Money is one of those topics the Buddha didn't shy away from, even though many people assume Buddhism is only concerned with renunciation. In fact, in the Sigalovada Sutta, the Buddha gave detailed, practical advice to householders on how to manage wealth wisely. He understood something crucial. Financial anxiety doesn't fade with age. It intensifies. And without clarity and security, older adults become vulnerable in ways that steal their dignity and peace. Let's speak plainly. The fear of outliving your money is real. The terror of not being able to afford care, of becoming dependent, of being exploited by scams targeting seniors. These aren't minor concerns. They're the silent weight that keeps many people awake at 3 in the morning. The Buddha taught that while we shouldn't cling to wealth, we also shouldn't be careless with it. Financial security isn't about accumulation, it's about stewardship. It's about understanding what you have, protecting it wisely, and using it to create peace rather than suffering. The Buddha advised dividing wealth into 4 parts. One for living expenses, one for investment in future security, one for saving against misfortune, and one for generosity. This wasn't just practical advice, it was Dharma. Because money, handled wisely, removes obstacles to practice. It's hard to cultivate inner peace when you're terrified of losing your home. I know a woman named Helen who spent her first 72 years avoiding anything to do with finances. Her husband handled everything. When he died suddenly, she discovered accounts she didn't know existed, bills she didn't understand, and scammers who immediately sensed her confusion. Within 6 months, she'd lost tens of thousands of dollars to phone schemes promising to help her. The shame nearly destroyed her. But then she did something brave. She asked for help, real help, from a legitimate financial advisor recommended by her bank. She learned slowly and without judgment toward herself what she needed to know. She created a simple budget. She understood her income sources. She set up automatic bill payments so nothing fell through the cracks. Most importantly, she learned the signs of financial manipulation so she could protect herself. She told me, "I thought being spiritual meant not caring about money, but the Buddha never said to be naive. He said to be wise, and wisdom means knowing how to protect what I need to survive." Financial literacy in later years isn't about getting rich. It's about having enough clarity that money anxiety doesn't steal your present moment. It's understanding, how much do I have? How much do I need? What are my expenses? Who can I trust? What protections do I have in place? These questions aren't worldly distractions from spiritual life. They're the foundation that allows spiritual life to flourish. The Buddha taught a principle called right livelihood as part of the Eightfold Path. For those no longer working, right livelihood becomes right stewardship, managing resources in ways that cause no harm to yourself or others, that support your capacity to be generous, that free you from the desperate grasping that comes from financial fear. If money feels overwhelming, start small. Learn one thing this week. Understand one bill. Ask one trusted question. Build financial literacy not as a mountain to climb, but as a path walked one step at a time. Because the peace that comes from knowing you can care for yourself, that you understand and control your financial reality, that peace is priceless. 6. Your personal code, the compass that never fails. The Buddha spoke of sila, ethical conduct, as the foundation upon which all peace is built. But he wasn't talking about rigid rules imposed from outside. He was talking about the inner compass you develop, the values you choose to live by, regardless of who's watching, the dignity that comes from knowing who you are and living in alignment with that truth. After decades of playing roles, parent, employee, spouse, caregiver, many people reach their 70s and realize they've lost touch with their core self. When the roles fall away, who remains? If you're not the busy one anymore, not the provider, not the one everyone relies on, then who are you? This identity crisis is one of the deepest challenges of aging, and it's where a personal code becomes not just helpful, but essential. Your personal code is the set of principles that define you, not what society expects, not what your children need, what you believe in at the deepest level. Perhaps it's honesty, speaking truth even when it's uncomfortable. Perhaps it's kindness, choosing gentleness in every interaction. Perhaps it's simplicity, living with less so you can be more present. Perhaps it's gratitude, meeting each day with acknowledgement of its gifts. I knew a man named Arthur who spent his career in corporate law, climbing ladders, making deals, proving his worth through achievement. When he retired at 70, he fell apart. Everything he defined himself by vanished overnight. He wasn't productive anymore, wasn't important, wasn't needed. He told me he felt like a ghost walking through his own life. Then he stumbled upon a simple Buddhist practice, the 5 precepts. These are the basic ethical guidelines Buddhists commit to. Not harming living beings, not taking what isn't given, speaking truthfully, abstaining from harmful substances, and respecting others. He started with just one, practicing ahimsa, non-harming. Not just toward others, but toward himself. He noticed how harshly he spoke to himself, how brutally he judged his own slowness, his fading memory. He began treating himself the way he'd treat a beloved friend. Gradually, he added more, speaking only words that were kind and true, even to himself, living simply, needing less, offering what he could to others without attachment to recognition. These weren't religious rules to him. They were choices that gave his days structure and meaning. He said, "My code doesn't care if I'm successful. It only cares if I'm kind. And that's a measurement I can meet every single day until I die." When you have a personal code, you stop being buffeted by every changing wind. You know how to respond to difficulty, not because someone told you, but because you've decided who you want to be in this world. When loneliness arrives, your code says, "I will still be kind to the grocery clerk." When disappointment comes, your code says, "I will still practice gratitude for what remains." When fear whispers that you don't matter, your code says, "I matter because I choose to live with integrity, and that choice is mine alone." What are your non-negotiables? What values do you want to carry with you until your last breath? Write them down. 3, 5, 7 principles that define the person you're becoming in this final chapter, and then practice them. Not perfectly, the Buddha never asked for perfection, but persistently. Because when everything else is uncertain, your values become the ground you stand on. 7. Identity beyond roles. Who you are when you're no longer someone. Here's the hardest truth about aging. The loss that cuts deepest isn't physical. It's the loss of identity. When you're no longer the worker, the parent everyone depends on, the busy one, the one who knows everything, when all those titles fall away like leaves in autumn, who are you? The Buddha understood this. He taught anatta, the doctrine of non-self, which says that our true nature isn't found in any fixed identity. We are not our roles. We are not our achievements. We are not even our thoughts about who we are. These are all temporary formations, like clouds passing through an empty sky. What remains when they pass? That's the question Buddhism invites us to sit with, especially in our later years when all our constructed identities begin to dissolve. For many people, this dissolution feels like annihilation. I met a man named Gerald who'd been a surgeon for 40 years. Brilliant, respected, always in demand. When he retired at 75, his hands had grown too unsteady for surgery, but his mind was still sharp. He told me, "I don't know who I am if I'm not Dr. Gerald." That's who I've been since I was 25. Now I'm just nobody. That feeling, "I'm nobody now," is one of the most painful aspects of aging. But Buddhism offers a radical reframe. You're nobody. You're finally free to discover who you've always been beneath all the doing, beneath all the proving, beneath all the masks you wore to fit into a world that values productivity over presence. The Buddha taught that our suffering comes from identifying with impermanent things. Your career was impermanent. Your role as a young parent was impermanent. Your strength, your beauty, your sharp mind, all impermanent. But your capacity for awareness, for kindness, for presence, that's what the Buddha pointed to as your true nature. And that doesn't retire. It doesn't fade. It deepens. There's a practice that can help with this transition. It's simple but profound. Sit quietly. Place your hand on your heart and ask, if I'm not what I do, not what others need me to be, not the roles I've played, then what am I? Don't rush to answer. Let the question breathe. Let yourself sit in the space of not knowing. You might begin to notice something. Without all the noise of identity, there's just awareness. Just breathe. Just this moment of being alive. The Buddha called this natural state our Buddha nature, the fundamental, unchanging essence that was there when you were born and will be there until you draw your last breath. It's not an achievement. It's what you are when you stop trying to be anything at all. Rebuilding identity in later years means shifting from doing to being, from external validation to internal worth, from I matter because I'm productive, to I matter because I'm here, because I'm aware, because I still have the capacity to love and be kind and notice the morning light through my window. What brings you joy now? Not for anyone else's approval, but just for you. Perhaps it's tending a small garden. Perhaps it's reading poetry. Perhaps it's sitting with your morning coffee in complete silence. Perhaps it's calling an old friend just to hear their voice. These aren't achievements. They won't go on your resume, but they're expressions of who you are when you're free from all the pressure to be somebody. The Buddha's final teaching, as he lay dying, was this: be a lamp unto yourself. Not achieve great things, not make your mark, just be your own light. Because you are enough, exactly as you are, in this very moment. The person you've become through 7, 8, 9 decades of living, the wisdom in your bones, the patience hard-won, the compassion born from suffering, that person is nobody. That person is remarkable, and nobody needs to validate that for it to be true. The Buddha taught that there are 3 refugees: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. But he also taught something even more fundamental: Attahi attano natho. You are your own refuge. Nobody saves us but ourselves. Nobody can and nobody may. We ourselves must walk the path. This isn't about isolation. It's about the foundation. When you build these 7 pillars, caring for your body, maintaining consistency, developing emotional resilience, creating meaningful connections, living by your values, ensuring financial clarity, and discovering identity beyond roles, you're not pushing people away. You're becoming whole enough that when people do come close, you're not desperately clinging to them for survival. You're offering your steady presence. And here's what happens when you do this work. Paradoxically, you often feel less alone, because you've stopped waiting for others to permit you to matter. You've stopped needing constant validation. You've found the quiet strength that comes from knowing you can care for yourself, meet yourself with kindness, and walk through each day with dignity regardless of who else shows up. The years after 60 can be the most liberating of your life, if you let them. Not because you're doing more, but because you're finally free to be. Free from the constant proving. Free from the exhausting performance of who you thought you should be. Free to simply exist, to breathe, to notice the miracle that you're still here after all these years, still capable of kindness, still able to feel the warmth of sunlight on your skin. These 7 pillars aren't burdens to carry. They're wings to fly with. Each one lightens you, freeing you from the heavy dependence on others' presence, others' approval, and others' validation. You become like a tree with deep roots. You can weather any storm, not because you're rigid, but because you're grounded in something unshakable, your own commitment to yourself. So I invite you now, gently, choose one pillar, just one. Perhaps it's starting a simple morning ritual. Perhaps it's practicing RAIN the next time difficult emotions arise. Perhaps it's finally learning about your finances. Perhaps it's reaching out to one person you've lost touch with. Whatever it is, start there. Not with grand plans or overwhelming goals, but with one small step toward becoming your own refuge. Because the Buddha was right. The most reliable person in your life has always been you. And it's never too late to remember that truth and begin living from it. Your life is still unfolding. Your breath is still rising and falling. Your heart is still capable of love. And that, dear friend, is more than enough. If this teaching touched something in you, I'd love to hear about it. Share in the comments which of these 7 pillars speaks most clearly to where you are right now. And if this video brought you peace or clarity, please subscribe to continue this journey together. Because we're all walking this path of aging, and we walk it better when we walk it together. Not dependent on each other, but grounded in ourselves, offering our presence as the greatest gift we have to give. May you be well, may you be at peace, and may you discover the profound freedom that comes from becoming your own most faithful companion.